I just wanted to add a great value that we had during our experience of implementing C4s is actually us, the security, sitting on these drawing sessions that Ahmed was leading with the developers, because it was actually a mini pre-threat model, because Ahmed was going through all the flows with the developers and trying to get a picture of all the systems. And at the same time, it made everyone think about how one system accesses another system, what is the authentication, what requests are being sent back and forth, what data is being sent back and forth. And it's a really good way to actually make developers and architects think in a security kind of way, because, at the same time, you're doing an architectural diagram, you're getting to know your application, but you're also thinking about how you're going to protect the data that flows around. And also, if you see, some applications have the classic mermaid diagrams and nothing more. So, what has Ahmed shown is actually a really, really good way to bridge this gap, to jump from, simple mermaid diagrams to data flows. And, as a lot of you guys know, and, Marius can maybe even confirm, a lot of struggles we had with data flows is that you need actually a good skill set to make them.
Yeah, can I actually expand on that? It's not easy to create data flow diagrams, right? A lot of the time we know how the component works, but we don't fully understand the flows and interactions between the different components. And so one of the biggest problems we had at the beginning is my component here, but we don't know what interactions, we don't know what calls it makes outside, or what inbound calls it makes, or what actually is the flow. We know it calls something, but we don't know when.
Maybe I'll add something here. One of the good things I found that you need to ask a lot of questions when you draw the diagram. So engineers will give you as much information as you ask for. So you need to keep digging deep and asking them questions. Why is this box here? How this line goes from here to here? And this is why I keep count of the lines, because when I move to the next level, people forget about the lines above, and then you end up with some systems that you didn't draw something for. So I keep count to make sure that I cover everything, and I do like final reviews that I can.
So when you create your C4 diagrams, you look at the final product and you see the lines, and if they don't match with the higher level of C4, you realize something went wrong, right? And you've got to revisit where that went wrong.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, when you ask all of these questions and start prodding, you actually realize that a lot of people, because, teams change, developers change, you really realize there's this gap of like people not knowing a lot about the application unless you prod them and make them think about it. And when you have finally create these C4 diagrams for the whole company, it's a good way to hand over, like, Ahmed initially said, it's a good way to hand over to any future developer so that they can just crack on and do their job instead of thinking of how their piece of the puzzle will kind of fit into the big picture. I see Timo has said that he's got a problem with diagramming brought to a session that you cannot follow so fast. How do you slow down developers to be able to follow the explanations? Timo, would you like me to unmute you? I can just, so you can just expand on that question. I'll unmute you if you want to expand. If not, I think what I gather from this is basically that sometimes, when you have a diagram, it's really hard to follow it, right? And it's really hard to understand what the author was trying to say. So I think
they are actually there in my, so I can explain how I do it. So they sometimes say, I have a diagram already, and I said, oh, please don't bring it because we need to understand it together. Because I have the assumption that one person in the team draw it, or two, and the others not. So they have a bit more background, but I think they are also overwhelmed with the information. So that's why we draw it together and spend time on it. and
So
then afterwards you find threads. So, and the question is, does it help me to zoom in and out? So does it mean that I have to look at it beforehand before I go to the teams, or is it so that I do it alone, the thread modeling?
Do you want to take it, Petra, or should I take it?
Go for it, Marius.
So it's a mixture of both, right? You want to be able to have a good view before you go to the thread model or what you actually thread modeling, just for you to have an understanding of the environment, the components, and how to steer the thread model in the right direction. The second part is that you want actually the time that you spend thread modeling to be spent actually discovering the threads, not just diagramming, right? So we use the C4 diagrams to create data flow diagrams, but at the same time, we still do the discovery and validate those flows, but we have that baseline, we have that base to go on, because otherwise we spend an hour or two trying to diagram. Virtually as well is not easy to diagram nowadays. It's not a whiteboard that we can all jump on a whiteboard and draw a diagram. It becomes a lot more time consuming drawing a diagram online. So having something prepared that you can actually look at as a security team and build those understanding of what the system is, then take that and actually break it apart during the thread model session. Query those flows, make sure that they are actually, those flows are the ones that you actually are thread modeling, because a lot of the time there might be a flow that hasn't been thought, because from a component perspective, it's not actually an interaction with that component directly, right? It's the infrastructure that's calling the component, or it's the infrastructure that's doing some action on that component. So we use the actual diagramming to be able to drive the thread model rather than base the thread model just on the diagram.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I wanted to say. So I don't want it to look like we're replacing this with a data flow diagram or replacing a threat model session with that. We still have the developers on the threat modeling session, and we still have them go through the flows. And I'll just actually explain that on the next slides. If you jump to the next slide, Ahmed. So this is, the love story of C4s and data flow diagrams. All right. So